So I think that like
Yeah.
in many instances, customer experience is branding. It's not really what you're saying as much as a brand. It's how a customer feels when they interact with your business. And that is more important than anything. The best brands in the world, they have a specific way of making people feel when they're interacting with the product.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. My guest today is John Sampogna. John is the co-founder and CEO of Wondersauce, a business acceleration agency that helps brands reach their next stage of growth through strategy, digital experience, and transformation. He has spent more than 15 years building award-winning work for major brands. Early in his career, he was recognized by Business Insider as one of the 30 most creative people in advertising under 30. John's perspective is that he does not just talk about activity, he talks about outcomes, he talks about growth, and what it takes to build teams that can actually deliver it. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thrilled to have you here. This was a little bit different topic for me, but hey, we've had a string of guests from Texas. So I counted last night. I've had 10 guests from Texas in about 40 episodes and 6 from Austin. So I love the great state of Texas, but it is nice to have a fellow New Yorker on the show. Finally, back to my roots. So let's get right to it. Your business is a little different, from my background. My background's financial services. So let's just start with this a little bit of table setting, if you will. When you say business acceleration, what does that actually mean to you in practice?
Yeah, I mean, we're a marketing agency. So people come to us for advertising and marketing needs, and they're at different stages of growth. So we sort of work with brands through two lenses. One would be around what we call like digital transformation. So this is really rebuilding a brand's footprint and infrastructure. So you said you're coming from like a financial services background. This would be like hypothetically, if a bank engaged my company, we would help them with their website, their mobile application, like rethinking the key points that a customer is going to interact with them from a pure utility standpoint, and make sure that that digital product is going to perform really well, or even introduce new ideas for them through that lens. So that's kind of one angle where we're building infrastructure that could be websites, e-commerce experiences, mobile applications across industry and sector, everything from, financial services down to brand websites, e-commerce companies that are growing fast, et cetera, something like that. And the other side is more on the traditional advertising and marketing side. So helping brands quite literally grow their revenue. So it could be getting to market and making their first million. It could be going from 1 million to 10 to 100. And that's basically our team building out strategies and then executing on content, influencer programs, paid and earned media, and ultimately driving a measurable approach to marketing that gets a brand from A to B.
Interesting. It's super interesting stuff. So you're talking a lot about clients that buying outcomes from that, because a lot of the traditional, I think the old school way of doing it was basically activity. So what that's your differentiator, it sounds like, and talk to us a little bit about that, how you approach doing this your way, which is adding value a little bit differently than some of the old fashioned ways, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, I think value-based pricing and outcome-based packages are very like in vogue right now. It's very trendy. And
Mhm.
ironically, it's something that we've always really done. Um, and I think it's really rooted in terms of how we built the business. We never wanted to create an agency that was like the best at making social content or the best at making a website or an app or buying media. That wasn't really like why we got out of bed. We were really inspired by the growth of the internet. I always say, like, I'm 41 years old. I remember a life pre and post internet. And I think what's interesting about people in my general age group is we were kind of, our adolescence came alongside the internet.
Mm.
So I remember like, that typing class in school where one day there was a computer with the internet and we were like gathering around it, like looking at it. And then like a few years later, begging my parents for AOL and, you know, my high school nights on Napster and LimeWire downloading music, and then college, pre and post Facebook and all that stuff. So when we built an agency, it was around taking these things that help brands live in this world and figuring out how to apply them to brands in a way that will drive their business forward. So, in terms of how we go about approaching our clients, we don't want to just say everyone needs the same thing. We want to prescribe a plan that we think will work for you. So, if you're trying to grow and we think that your biggest opportunity is word of mouth, that's going to be a completely different approach than someone who's like, look, we grow like crazy on Meta. We know exactly who buys our stuff all day long on Instagram and Facebook. It's our biggest channel. We want to test one more additional paid channel. Totally different approach. So for us, it's our ability to kind of like understand your business, who you're marketing to, and prescribe a situation that we think you'll succeed with. And for me, that's not like just selling services; it's selling an outcome.
Hmm. Yeah, that is interesting stuff. Now, I am going to date myself a little bit here, and yeah, I predated the internet, but I was an early adopter of Pong and in
Mm,
television. So that was what when I realized you could play a game on a TV. That was great stuff. And so I was
yes.
in television, not in Atari. But yeah, the
Yeah.
when AOL first came out, I didn't even understand it, and I was sitting there going, "How do you get the information through a telephone line?" I don't understand because to me it was just carrying voice. I didn't understand the concept of data being transmitted. So that was kind of a mind blowing one. But I started working just before email, just before. So I did work for a couple of years and we had no email and we had to pick up the old fashioned thing called a phone with a
Yeah.
handle. Yeah, it actually lit up and you picked up, you put it to your ear. So um, things have changed certainly, but interesting stuff. All right. So you work across a lot of different areas, right? Strategy, creative, technology, execution. So let's talk about where things break down. Where do things start breaking down inside these organizations and you come in and come to the rescue?
They break down everywhere.
Yeah, I
Every
bet.
every business has a different problem. You have some businesses where they completely have their entire technology stack and the way that they run their sites and things like that. It's all completely well oiled and amazing. They don't need any help there at all. You have some businesses where like that's just not what they do. It's never something that they've really invested in and maintained, and they need a ton of help there. You have brands that like think of marketing in a way where it's completely reliant on paying for customers, which makes sense because we live in a world now where people are like kind of brainwashed into thinking that you put money into these channels like Google and Facebook and customers come out. But there's the beauty of marketing where it's not necessarily always about paying for customers. It's about building a brand that has resonance and gets people's attention because it exists in a way that fits into culture seamlessly. So I think like every business has their own set of challenges, including my business.
Mm.
And I would say like when we're at our best, it's basically our ability to be objective and to look at a situation and understand where we can provide the most value or where we can't provide value and have a conversation with our clients. But I would say like having seen thousands of businesses over the course of the last 15 plus years, um, it doesn't matter the size of the company. There are issues and opportunities, everywhere.
It that's interesting you say that. Um, because to me, the chaos grows as the firm grows bigger,
Yes.
certainly. But smaller and smaller companies that are scaling have their own set of challenges. So you don't see much of a distinction between the size and the chaos. It's different chaos, I bet, but there's
It's
chaos.
no, no, no. It's I would say smaller firms. The, it could still be very challenging, but the net is easier to kind of see the entire picture.
Yeah,
Um, I would say with certain, I think it's actually easier working with bigger companies in some regards because you're you're able to just understand that like some things are completely out of your control. Like
yeah.
you may be talking about a business goal with a client, and you might say like, look, especially let's tie it back to outcome based pricing or value based pricing or how we structure things, right?
Mm,
That's like I always think of that as it's a mentality. It's not an absolute. In many instances, having your contract and how you're paid tied to an outcome is not feasible. because there are things that your direct clients, if you're dealing with the marketing team, like they don't control product. So like there's things that they don't control customer service. Maybe there are things that like will lead to a sale that goes beyond what we do.
Mhm.
So I would say when you're working with bigger companies, sometimes you'll run up into an issue, you'll flag it to your stakeholders, and they'll just be like, it's out of our control. We don't touch it.
Mhm.
There's nothing we can do. That's just like what we have to overcome, and that's just an assumption we have to deal with.
Yeah. Interesting though. I always love that discussion because I just always feel like the bigger companies are so much harder to control, but smaller companies have such interesting, unique challenges, especially when they're scaling. So we talk about that a lot on the show. It's interesting. Um, so let's tie this in. You know, we are basically a customer focused podcast. We talk a lot about customer experience and customer success. Let's try to start linking a little bit.
Yeah.
Where do you see the clearest link between what you're doing and the external customer experience, and what are the challenges there?
I mean, I think they're intrinsically linked. I always say that the best brands in the world, um, they make you feel a certain way. And many times it isn't even like, I love this brand. It's the best thing ever. It's just like you have this subconscious moment when you're trying to maybe book a reservation or modify a flight or buy something that you know you need, where in the back of your mind, you remember, like, oh, yeah, that's an easy thing to do. And you don't mind doing it. Or you're like, "Oh, I have to like clear my schedule tomorrow. I'm going to do this thing. It's going to be a pain." So I think that like
Yeah.
in many instances, customer experience is branding. It's not really what you're saying as much as a brand. It's how a customer feels when they interact with your business. And that is more important than anything. The best brands in the world, they have a specific way of making people feel when they're interacting with the product. So if you could figure out a prescription and a formula to have every brand on that right path where their people are feeling great, it's an amazing thing to offer. And I wish it was that easy. But I think like customer success, customer experience, all that stuff is intrinsically tied to brand building.
Yeah, no, certainly it is, and it's interesting to talk about the different ways that it could come into play. But you're right. I like the way you just alluded to what you feel like when you have to deal with somebody. And you know, my bad experience recently has been with insurance, medical insurance, and people are probably going to right. You're gonna when you say that, most people are going to cringe. But you're like, oh God, honey, I have to call the insurance today. Like they screwed up this chart. Like you're just sitting there, you know, it's going to be painful.
Yep.
Whereas there's certain companies and brands that you interact with that you're just excited to be a part of it. But even even services like my doctor's office is actually great. It's just the insurance end of it is difficult to deal with. But
Yep.
those experiences really stick out, especially when you're dealing with things like so important things like medical and health and insurance, because it's more that's more important than sneakers when it comes down
Yep.
to it. It's nice to we went to Dick's Sporting Goods because it's baseball season. Maybe had new cleats, new baseball pants, all that stuff. It's fine. It was a fairly seamless experience, but that's something where the kids get excited, even though
Yeah.
it's a little crazy sometimes at Dick's Sporting Goods, but the kids are genuinely excited to go and get the new cleats, the new pants, batting gloves, the whole 9 yards after sitting around all winter. So that's interesting stuff.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's I always say to brands too, you know, maybe we don't want to be memorable. Like we don't have to
Yeah,
aim to always try and create a memorable experience.
yeah,
Um, I think that most of the time, if it's a memorable experience, it's not a good one. And I think sometimes you want to do the basics in the most forgettable way possible, meaning that like you're just subconsciously building up equity within someone's mind. And they're
mhm.
like, they like you for some reason, but they don't remember why. And that's amazing too. So I
It means
say
they
that usually
trust
as a
you.
joke, but
It
yeah,
means they trust you. The thing we talked about that. John Morris, a few episodes ago, he was great. He says he's awesome at boring. You have to
yeah,
be awesome at boring. And I thought that was a great line because you really do, especially in this kind of the stuff I do, financial services or financial planning, anything like accounting stuff. Sorry, people don't get too excited about insurance, accounting, things like that. And you have to just be really good at the basic stuff. and people trust you and know it's not going to be a painful exercise where there's a lot of, I like customer effort score myself, but a lot of
Yeah.
effort. And when you do that, I think you're right. Subconsciously, they say they trust you and they're good that it's not going to be a dreadful experience or something that's going to be painful. And you can't, we talk about, at least I do, you can't always have the wow experiences where you're creating super experiences. You have to create appropriate experiences depending on what you're doing, and not necessarily it's great if you can go for the wow, and you can build a client base that is fans, so to speak, but I don't know that you'd always have the roaring cheering super fans. um and we did talk about Taylor Swift, right? It's a little different when you're Taylor Swift than and building a fan base, and she does a marvelous job of it, than an accounting firm.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually you don't want like big surprises and
No surprises.
moments of proclamation when you're looking at your tax return or
Yeah,
when you're going over bank statements. You're
right.
unless like something amazing happened, you're most of the time you're like, oh wow, that's a surprise. That's not a good one.
Yeah, well, but it's your tax returns. Usually, it's this.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually it's a surprise down. I call it, but
Yep.
occasionally you get the surprise up, which would like lend to a good experience with your tax accountant. But talk about, yeah, that's a challenge building an experience if you're a tax accountant, and the one I always say is a dentist, because honestly, there's not much good happening there with your experience when you go into the dentist. So they do have to help it. There's just the sounds. It's just, there's not much to work with there. So they have to really work on everything else, which is, trying to calm you down and make it easy for you with the billing, the payment, and all that stuff. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. How do you think about client health? Like your firm, not necessarily your clients thinking about building, growing their business. How do you think about your client health?
Yeah. I think about it. I think the way you think about any kind of services businesses, account list. I look at the output of what we're delivering. I have a few kind of like baseline things I need to know. Like, are we delivering work on time? Whatever the big priority of that quarter or year is, how are we tracking towards it? Is the work being is the work impactful? So there's like the stuff in market or ongoing from a work product standpoint. So like how many boxes are we checking there and is the client happy? From a relationship standpoint, um, how is the day-to-day interactions with the teams that are managing us and our internal teams? I look for vibes, right? Are the vibes good? Are people, is it completely transactional? Or are there more nuanced discussions? And I always say this to our team, we're no different than a landscaping business. We can do the best service in the world, but if we leave cigarette butts in the beds, or we run over the kids' toys and
Yeah.
mash them all over the backyard, they're going to say, "Hey, by the way, like the lawn looks great, but you keep destroying my son's stuff. Why are you doing that?
Mm,
Or can you please be mindful with the cigarette butts?" Like
mm,
eventually they're going to let you go. So like it's not just about the work product, it's about actually delivering good work and having a good relationship. So I look for that day-to-day interaction with our clients and our internal teams and seeing how strong that is. And then I look for like the X factor, which for us it's, is there a gap in what we're doing that we can offer up to our clients as like a value add, where we can kind of always say, this is it's a privilege working with you. Here's some things that we were just thinking about that we think you should know. No money needs to exchange hands. If you like it, awesome. If it's not valuable, throw it away. But here are things we think you should be aware of from a marketing perspective or technology perspective. So we look for ways to add value to the relationship where,
mhm,
it's easier to maintain relationships than to pitch and get net new ones. So we want to do everything we can to retain.
mhm.
And I think like I read a book and I forget who wrote this book, but oh man, it was a really good book. Within I think it was like Richard Kirschenbaum who ran an agency back in the '90s, and it was something like, I think he said, I always send um emails to a few clients when I'm on vacation, and it was really along the lines of like letting the client know that even when I'm on vacation, I'm thinking about your business.
Yeah.
And I just always thought of that as like a really interesting, easy way to show someone that's engaging your business that you care.
That you care.
So those are just little like kind of low hanging fruit things that I like to try and do.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm curious about your retention, right? Because we're always talking about the value of the experience and the retention. Like you just said, it's much easier. Well, it's much better to retain the client than have to go out and churn, worry about churn and getting new ones. What kind of retention uh, situation are you dealing with? Is it a finite term like a SaaS contract, or can they just say at any time we're going out to bid or we're going to someone else? Because that's more of my world. Was always don't ever you'd ever want the client to go to RFP, right?
Oh,
Because
it's
they
the same
could
thing.
do it at any time. So I was always living in the retention cycle of it could be any time. Where some the SaaS conversations we have is more of a retention. It's an annual contract or every two
We
years.
have annual contracts, we have project contracts, we have multi-year contracts, but you are one phone call away from
Yeah,
everything changing, and
yeah.
that there's no contract to prevent that. Um,
So you've got
so
everything. You've got a little bit of everything. Yeah.
yeah, but it's more so the latter. I mean, it's really like you can you could have your year ruined in 3 phone calls.
And
That could all happen after this interview ends.
yeah.
And you can have the best year ever by 1 phone call. So it's a business where we aim for like, we have clients that we've been working with for a decade. So we have very good retention,
Mhm,
but I would say our best years are like 70, 80% retention where we're having to backfill about 20% for net new revenue. And that
mm,
keeps things healthy and interesting. But I've had years where it's 40% retention and we're backfilling 60% of our revenue.
wow.
We actually migrated the business about 5 years ago to move primarily from projects to relationships. And it was really painful, but it's paid off, and it's paid off a lot. I mean, it's a much better way of running a business, but it's also there's a lot of pain to get to that end result.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to hear you say because the way I think of your business, just not knowing much about it, is more project based. Where
Yeah,
it's, oh, we're going to hire you for this project. You're going to put out a campaign or something like that. Oh, thanks a lot, John. You were great. See you later. Maybe we'll be back in 2 years.
yeah,
But that to me is why you have to build the relationships and kind of keep the value chain going. So that's why I think your business to me was interesting because I don't know too much about it, but it's the same kind of metrics. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about scaling a little bit because you've scaled your company. What let's talk. What do you learn about scaling that you think folks might not understand when you first started building Wonder Sauce?
oh man, it was a wild ride from like the early days. It went from myself and my business partner, and after the first year we were like 12 or 13 people, and then the year after that 30 or 40, year after that 100, and it just was wild. I would say this: once you once you rip the band-aid off and start hiring people, it's really scary, but it's crucial, obviously. And I would say that if I could go back and do it again from the beginning, I would have done it as I would have done it much faster, and we already did it faster. As we already did it quite
Really?
quite fast. But I would say this: try and find people that complement your skill set. When you're a small team and you're all doing a lot, look for the gaps and fill the gaps. And that sounds really obvious, but I always see this when I talk to founders and I talk to other agency people and startup people. They're like, maybe they're a creative by trade or an engineer by trade or a project manager by trade. And in startup mode, they're doing a little bit of everything. And maybe the engineer is like, I really want to hire a head of technology because I'm doing kind of like the accounting, I'm doing biz dev, I'm doing still managing the engineering team, and I'm blah blah blah. But maybe like your best role right now is actually to just double down on being the person building that engineering team because you want to make sure that like the first 10 people you hire are going to do it your way, and you're going to establish a rock solid practice and process. And maybe like you faking it on the accounting side is not the best use of your time, and maybe just hire a bookkeeper or maybe hire a project manager or someone that can do inbound biz dev or whatever it is. But just because you flexed into different roles and are finding some success doing that stuff, or you're interested in it, do not neglect the things that made you really special and unique, that led you to start the business, because that is your intellectual property.
Right.
So I see people making that mistake a lot. They try and um they try and scale the thing they're actually amazing at, when they should just be doubling down on that until the company gets to a point where they can actually start scaling that in a responsible way, because there's a blueprint.
Wow. Yeah, that is fascinating stuff. So that is great experience to share with the audience. All right, John, we've got time for one more question in the traditional interview part of the show. And I want to ask you about clients and how clients can help themselves, because I don't think we think about that enough. And I've worked with clients that are great and they're great partners, and I've worked with clients that are not quite the best clients to work with. And I think that works to their detriment. So the question is, what do the best clients do differently that allows better work to happen from your perspective?
It's simple. They're transparent. They are always in communication with their partner in terms of just getting the right type of feedback, the right type of information we need to be successful. They trust, like, we look for areas to build trust early on in the partnership.
Mhm.
And when they start to see how that partnership can play out, they double down on that area. And I think there's like kind of a level of empathy on both sides, where we know that in some instances, we're going to be worked really hard during crunch time. And when the clients are aware of that and are kind of empathetic to it and just appreciative, our team doesn't care. They want to work harder because they love that client. Um, and I think that, um, it's one of those things where when they're not happy, they they tell us why in a productive way, and we will quickly fix it. I think these are all like basic things, but you'd be surprised, like in a people business, this is what ends up leading to more relationships that start to go in the wrong direction, and the work is not as good because there's little communication breakdowns that lead to um less than ideal working scenarios.
Yeah, that's interesting. The empathy on the client end of it is an interesting way to think of it. And I felt the kind of the same way, but I never really thought of it as them being empathetic to you. But I've seen it, and you're exactly right. It's those clients that have no empathy towards the provider, where they're trying to help you. And I've seen a bunch of scenarios where one, they're just sometimes they don't like the change of if you're a new
Yeah.
provider. Some people, there's an internal battle, and they're kind of sabotaging it passively and actively sometimes, right?
Yep.
But you see that there's no concern for you and the work you're doing. And of course, they're the client and you're there to help them and work for them. But if they have a little bit of that empathy, like you said, and a little bit of support and create a partnership, it makes things go a hell of a lot smoother, and you're going to get a lot more value out of what you're paying for, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Great. All right. That was an awesome first segment, but we got to hit these segments. It is time for Does It Hold Water? Let's go. All right, everybody. It is time for Does It Hold Water, my favorite segment. This is where I ask our guests to be our resident expert witness for the day. I read them a quote, a piece of thought leadership, something, and they tell me what they think. Does it hold water or not? You ready, John?
Let's do it.
All right. So today's quote, I'm just summarizing some business recruiting advice. We're talking about hiring. An defense attorney has a basic, simple statement. He says, "We hire for hard skills. We fire for soft skills." Does the defense case hold water?
Yeah, it does. I think, especially in a business like ours, we're looking for hard skills, but in a people business, it's all the interpersonal stuff on the soft side that makes people, sink or swim. So we're looking for that, tenfold. I mean, the thing that we're mainly looking for is excitement. Like, do you care about the work that we're doing? Because um, we need our clients to know you care. We need you to be genuinely interested in the work that we're doing, because our competitors, we have to assume that like the stuff they're consuming on the weekend, the things they read, the things they listen to, they're not doing that to be better at work. They're doing it because they enjoy it. So I look for people that are passionate about this business and get excited about delivering this type of work for our clients.
Yeah, so it's really a blend for you, right? I mean, it's a kind of simple statement. I asked it on purpose because it is simple, and you have to have the hard
Yeah.
skills to do the job you're doing. But I think, you need to go a step further, especially right now. It's a very competitive job market. But that's interesting that you say you hire for excitement, right? Because a
Hmm.
lot of times it's just, have you done this job? I feel like from a recruiting standpoint, have you done this job? And
Yeah,
check the check boxes, and everything from a corporate perspective is very, here's the box, here's the box, here's the box, check, 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 check. And it's very hard, I think, especially in your line of work, to find that piece that throws the candidate kind of over the top for you. And that's
yeah,
that excitement for the job that you just talked about.
yep,
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right. Let's hit chip shots. All right, everybody. It is time for chip shots. This is our shorter form questions, still professional, but a little bit more personal in nature. And we ask 3 or 4 time permitting. We always go with the book question. John, could you give us a book to recommend that has influenced you personally or professionally?
Danny Meyer, Setting the Table, is probably my best business book I've read, and just about his journey through hospitality, and whether it was fine dining or like Shake Shack or something like that. I always think that's just like an amazing book for people that deal with customers. He's a pro, so that's a good one.
That's hospitality. Interesting you said that, because I had a guest recommend Will Guidara. What was the name of the book? Hospitality. He built a restaurant in New York. Same kind of
Okay.
thing. Because that's certainly something where you're building experiences, and it's much more memorable, right? Than like we were talking about earlier in the show about accounting, where if
Yep.
you want to be a top notch restaurant, you really have to build the experience. Same thing with hospitality.
Yep.
Interesting. All right, good one. All right, leader question. This is going to be interesting for you. If you could spend a day shadowing a real leader, professional in any industry, who would it be, and what would you hope to learn?
Oh, that's tough. I think honestly, uh, like Pep Guardiola. He's a soccer coach for Manchester City. He coached Barcelona, Bayern Munich. He's a legend, arguably the best coach
Mhm.
in any sport for the last 20, 30 years. Um, I would love to see how he gets the most out of his team and keeps them fresh and motivated. And I mean, he's legendary. So I would love to just spend a week kind of like in and out of his team meetings and trainings and all that stuff, and see what someone who gets the most out of high performers looks like.
That's interesting to think of, because we have a soccer fan now, not a lot of people follow soccer. These are very high paid professionals from all different countries.
Yeah,
Right?
different
So the
languages. Yeah,
Manchester, right? So for anybody who doesn't know soccer, the Premier League is the United Kingdom's major league of soccer, and it is the Premier League probably in the world. Although I think our friends in Italy might debate that, but it, you've got super high paid athletes from all sorts of different countries, and to bring everybody together like that, that would be a very interesting person to talk to. Awesome, good one. All right. Is there a particular experience or failure early in your career that taught you a valuable lesson you still use today?
let's see. I would say just knowing when to knowing when something's just not going to work out and moving on fast. I think early on, I thought that whether it was a client or employee, I just thought like, let's fix. We can always make it better, blah blah blah. When sometimes like things just are not aligned, and you can't fix every scenario, and it's better for both parties to just move on at
Yeah.
a certain point. So I think like that would have saved me a lot of time and effort early on, where the second you start to feel something that's just like, this is not going to work, you try and fix it. The second that same feeling comes back,
Y-
what's the most responsible way to unwind this?
Yeah. That's an interesting one. That's a very
Yeah.
interesting one. I mean, from your experience building a company, these questions are pretty cool, actually. So that's an interesting take, which leads me to the next one, because I haven't asked the risk question in a while, because I thought it was too simple for some people. But with your background and the way you've built a company and grew it very fast, I'm going to ask the final question is the risk question. What is one professional risk that really paid off for you that you took?
Starting a business. And there's a difference between a risk and a terrible idea. And I learned what that was early on. I remember when I was 26 and we were considering doing this, um, I didn't have a family. I had a small apartment and, not many responsibilities. I had a good job. I had a really good job. But I was confident that if I started a business and quit this job, that if I failed, I'd be able to get another job. I was very confident in that.
Hmm.
So the risk was quitting my job to start something. And I guess the risk would be finding another job and an ego bruise that it didn't work out. Right.
Mm.
Um, I would say that when you understand what failure looks like and you are okay with it, it's a good risk. You should take it. But a bad idea is when you don't understand the implications of your failure, meaning like you might fail and bad things will happen that you don't even know about. It could be so bad that you don't even grasp so like if you don't really know what you're doing and you're just like, let's risk it. Maybe don't do that. So try and talk yourself through what failure looks like. It's a helpful exercise, regardless of whether or not it's a really stupid idea. Talk yourself through it and figure out like what the downside looks like. And if you're cool with it, it's a good risk. If you don't really know, then maybe do more work before you jump into that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's fabulous. That is a fabulous way to end the show, John. Hey, thank you so much for being a great guest today. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and your wonderful company?
Yeah, you can find us at wondersauce.com and you can find me on LinkedIn, just John Sampogna. I'm pretty active there.
You have been a great guest, my friend. Thanks again. And thank you all for watching Your Customer, Your Success. I will be back with more CX leaders, customer success leaders. And like I say, I always have a few tricks up my sleeve or a little change up on the outside corner for you. So great job. That's all for today. Bye for now. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.